Hi sweet moms and dads, it's Didi here, and today is a Book Tuesday. The book is the New York Times bestseller, The Whole Brain Child, 12 Proven Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind, written by Dr. Daniel Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. Dr. Daniel Siegel is a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. He has received his medical degree from Harvard University and completed his postgraduate medical education at UCLA with training in pediatrics and child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry. His psychotherapy practices includes children, adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Dr. Tina Payne Bryson is pediatric and adolescent psychotherapist. She speaks to parents, educators, and clinicians all over the world. She earned her PhD from the University of Southern California, where her research explored attachment science, child rearing theory, and the emerging field of interpersonal neurobiology. The most important part of her bio, she says, is that she is a mom to her 3 boys. Together, they authored the New York Times bestseller, The Whole Brain Child, that has been translated into over 20 different languages. This is a beautiful book that I think every parent should read, and the good news is that although Dan and Tina are scientists with long-time practice, they actually wrote it in a very easy to read and understand way. They give us practical ways, strategies that we can use in our day-to-day lives as parents to cope with challenging situations, such as tantrums at home, our kids reacting in a way that we don't really understand, or sibling fights, or when they refuse to get dressed. So all these things that happen in our life as parents, we can use them as an opportunity to help the brain of our child to develop. So they give us these 12 strategies to nurture and help their brain to become a whole brain, as they called it. All of us, we want the same thing for our kids. If I ask every parent that I meet, what do you want for your child? Most parents will say, I want my child to be happy, independent, to build great relationship, to be kind, compassionate, to take great decisions. All of us, we want these things for our children. But how many of us actually spend significant amount of time to work and help our kids to develop all these qualities? Not much, because usually we operate in a crazy environment. Our days are full of different challenges and activities, and we operate on something which Dan and Tina called survival mode. The good news is help our kids to thrive during the challenging situation we face in our day-to-day life. So we don't have to come up with time specifically allocated to help our kids to develop integrated and whole brain, but it's more about using what we have and every practical daily situation and help our kids to become more integrated. So how do we do that? The way we do it, according to the authors, is to learn more about the brain, because the brain simply determines who we are and what we do in life. And the brain goes through different development, it matures. Young kids have very immature brains yet, and by learning about the brain, we would know more about how we can help our kids to become more fulfilled, to develop better relationship with themselves, with other people, become more compassionate, and then to become a problem solvers as well. And our brain is really interesting organ, and it seems that it's full of different personalities. We have the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, we have different regions responsible for memories, we have the lizard brain, which is more primitive, and the mammal brain. So it all seems that our brain has different personalities, and our role, if we want to help our kids to thrive, it's to help them integrate all these parts. So we talk about integration as a process. So where do we start? According to the authors, we have to help our kids to integrate first their left hemisphere and right hemisphere. The left is responsible for logic, for linguistic, for linears, for making lists. The right hemisphere is non-verbal, it's responsible for us getting and providing signals through the tone of the voice, through the gestures, through our eyes and facial expressions. It cares about the whole picture rather than the details. And kids are, up until they're 3 years of age, predominantly right hemisphere dominant, which means that they don't really develop yet their left hemisphere that well, so they don't really care about responsibilities, time, logic. And if we try, when we talk to our kids, to connect to their left side, it's a lost battle. So our role as parents is to help them to integrate the right side and the left side through different strategies. For example, if your child comes today and says, "You're a horrible mom, you don't pay me any attention," it's not going to help us if we said and logically try to explain to them, "Let me go back to that. Actually, that's not true. I really care about that because," and you make list of things that you've been doing. You have to attune to your right brain and then connect to your child before you use your left brain. So you may say something like, "Oh, you must be really mad at me today. Is this because of that or it is because of this?" So you need to connect and then redirect. This is one of the strategies that you can use. The second integration happens vertically, and this is the integration between, and don't laugh here, the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain. Now, I really laughed when I read that because, of course, we know there is no downstairs brain and upstairs brain, but this is the analogy that Dan and Tina used in the book in a very cute way to explain to parents in simple language what do we mean by more primitive part of the brain. So if you can imagine, this is the brain here in our head, so this is the limbic area and the brainstem, and the lizard brain so-called, and the more sophisticated part of the brain, the upstairs brain. And they make the analogy of the house. Downstairs you have the living room, the kitchen, the basement room, the laundry, so all your basic needs are met downstairs. And upstairs you have the bedrooms and you have the better part of the house. And when we act instinctively, we use our primitive brain, our lizard brain. And the upstairs brain, where we take decisions, we think logically, so we think about the consequences of our actions. We are able to pause before we act, so we can consider the consequences. Or this is where empathy sits, this is where the moral decisions sit, and it's the part that it's not yet developed in our kids. So sometimes we expect them to react and act as they are really well coordinated and emotionally balanced creatures, but we forget that this part of the brain is not yet developed, and the brain actually will develop fully by the time they're in their mid-20s. And one of our most important things you can do as parents is to teach our kids to take decisions in emotionally challenging situations. And how do we do that? We need to really help them to make decisions, consider the consequences of these decisions, and we can do that via asking them different questions, via encouraging their independence. And we as parents tend to prefer to do most things instead of our kids, but it's important to challenge them and to ask them, "Convince me, what's your decision, what's your solution, what would you do in this case?" so that they can start building this muscle. The third integration is the integration between the implicit and explicit memory. Implicit memory is how kids up until 18 months of age would record everything that happens around them. Implicit memory we use, for example, if you are changing the diaper of your child. You don't have to really think how a diaper has to be changed. You know it because based on previous experience, it's already recorded up here. You would exercise your explicit memory though if you have to remember, when was the first time when I changed the diaper of my child? And then maybe you need to go back to the hospital when you did it for the first time and remember, and this is exercising your explicit memory. So the author suggests we think about memories as different memories, different events that happened. They're like a jigsaw puzzle. And in order for us to make sense and put this puzzle in context and be able to see the big picture, we need to put the puzzle together. Especially if they have negative events that have happened before, they wouldn't know that their actions today have been impacted by this implicit memories or these parts of the puzzle, as I'll put it that way. For example, your child may act and react in a strange way and you may think, why my child is so afraid of this or that? But they may be something that has happened years ago that has been recorded in their implicit memory and they have not processed it yet and put it in a context. One of the strategies is remember to remember. It's a muscle, you build it in your kids. It's very good if you can ask them daily, how was your day? What did you do today? That's what I do with Mika. Every day when I go home after work, I ask him, where did you go? in the park, so what did you do there? And that's away from their memories to get recorded in the explicit part. The next integration is the integration of the different part of ourselves. We all have different aspects and we should explore them and encourage our kids to explore them in themselves. The main thing I want to mention here is that we have to help our kids distinguish between feel and am. Because sometimes when our kids are in a certain state, they can get stuck there and define themselves based on this state. What I mean here, instead of I feel lonely, I feel sad, they can say I am lonely, I am sad, and in time this can be their internal talk. So it's important for us to help them understand, first of all, that they can focus on different parts of themselves. So they can be sad, but if they focus on being happy, they can be happy. They can be annoyed, but if they focus on being joyful, they can be joyful. And how do we do that? There are different strategies. Mindfulness, of course, comes here. And honestly, for me, I think I listened to a talk that Dan gave somewhere, and he would say, you know that for years people wouldn't brush their teeth, and now 99% of people would brush their teeth. Something like that makes these people to start from non-brushing to brushing needs to happen in relation to mindfulness. So we need to spend 2 or 3 minutes a day for a brain hygiene, to brush our brains. So we need to help our kids to be able to focus their attention on the different part of themselves and to explore them freely. Also, we need to explain to them that of course they go through different emotions, but it doesn't mean that they're gonna be stuck in these emotions. And the last integration is the integration between the self and the others, so the integration of we. Because our brain is a social brain, we are wired to connect, to relate to other people, and the way every single experience we have with other people, whether it's sharing a story, whether it's hugging, laughing, talking about something, physically shapes our brain according to neuroplasticity. So as parents, it's important that we help our kids to be empathetic, to be kind, to be compassionate, to relate to other people with ease, but at the same time to retain and remain individualistic to a point. We don't want them to be purely individualistic, and we don't want them to be purely relatable, meaning needy and demanding and depending on other people. We need them to have healthy relationship with themselves and with other people as well. There are different strategies we can use here, from using spontaneous games and improvisation games to asking our kids specific questions. I really encourage you to go through the book and see how it works. I'm sure you've heard of the mirror neurons, which are the reflectors of the mind. Mirror neurons is what makes you want to have a sip of water when you see somebody else having a sip of water. But by knowing about mirror neurons, we would know that the people who we spend time with, whether they're sad, joyful, happy, or unhappy, can influence our internal state of mind. The most important relationship in we is between us and our kids. It's not only about making sure that we raise thriving kids, happy kids, fulfilled kids. It's about raising a generation that would put the foundations for the generations to follow. So I know it sounds crazy, but imagine you holding your grandchildren who are as happy, as fulfilled, as thriving as your kids were. There is so much in this book. I really recommend you to buy it, and it's not only for parents, it's for caregivers, for people who work in education, also for grandparents, and I think that that's the best gift we can give to our kids. We can help them to become whole-brained kids. We can help them to use the whole brain in a more coordinated way so that they can live happy, fulfilled, and thriving life. So that's it from me, sweet moms and dads. I really hope you liked this video and you learned more about the brain. The book is full of amazing cartoons as well, and diagrams and pictures and images, and also it gives you suggestions how you can explain the brain and how the brain works to your kids depending on how old your child is. Now I would love to hear from you. What are your coping strategies when you're finding yourself in a challenging parenting situation? What do you do when your child throws a tantrum? What do you do when your child doesn't want to get dressed and go to school? please share in the comments below, and I would love to hear from you. If you like this video, please give me a thumb up and subscribe for my channel, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye!